So growth for some people is paralyzing. I already don't like my life. I already have too much stress. My wife is already mad at me. I already miss the baseball games.
Sometimes the answer is not marketing, it's a system.
You want a real quick way to see if you're efficient with your time and when you need to make changes, do 75 hard.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Life by the Horns. This is a no-nonsense podcast that definitely lives up to its tagline, all bull and no bullshit. Here you can expect one of three types of shows. Number one, we're going to bring you raw and unfiltered conversations from leaders that are absolutely crushing it out there in life and business. Number two, we'll tackle your burning questions in our Q&A sessions because, sometimes you just need real answers to real problems that you're dealing with. And number three, we're going to pull back the curtain on Best Life Group and give you a real inside look at how we think and operate. No sugarcoating, just real talk about business, health, family, fitness, and grabbing life by the horns. My name is Jarvis Gatlin. I am the digital marketing manager here at Best Life Group with your host, Dustin Lundy. What's up, man? How you doing today?
What's up, man? I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm going to get this intro nailed in one of these days. But I'm doing good. I'm doing good, man. So fun topic today. I saw you cause a little stir over the weekend with that post you shared about sleep and motivation. So, classic internet, where you make a post and then all of a sudden it turns into World War III in the comments. And
Right.
so I just, I want to start out by chatting about that, man. Tell me a little bit about what you were actually getting at there.
Well, to be fair, it wasn't even me that was getting at anything. No, as you know, and some others know, I'm a huge fan of Alex Ramosi and Layla and what they've accomplished in their life. And I just think they're definitely an anomaly for sure. But he had shared something, and I'm just paraphrasing, and it was just that it's not that you need more sleep, and that part I'm not paraphrasing. The next part I'll mess up, but it's that most people aren't pursuing or doing anything in life that gives them the energy to get out of bed. There's nothing motivating, about their life. And so I saw it and I was like, yeah, man, this is fire. This is so many people. And so I just reshared it, a couple of fire emojis, and man, people I don't know if they didn't read it, but when I started seeing the comments, I'm like, no, it didn't say you don't need sleep. Because clearly we all need sleep, and I'm a huge, fan of taking care of yourself and getting enough rest and recharging and all those kind of things. But I think more often than not, you hear people say that I'm tired, and it's not that they're tired. They just don't have anything that gets them intrinsically motivated in their life. And so I saw some of the comments from a handful of people, and the funny thing is this never got aired. I actually started making a video as I was driving because I didn't want to type anything. So I was just like, no, you idiots, you're not fucking reading between the lines or reading anyway. And so I started making a video to share, and then I was just like, I got a little heated in it. And I was just like, no, it's just not a good idea. So I ended up not posting and just replied to some of the comments. But yeah, definitely got a couple of people fired up, I guess.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how one post about motivation can get people so stirred up and start something stirring in people, So it's but I think the overall feeling there, or whatever you want to call it, is there's something people have that's making them a little touchy about whether it's work-life balance or whatever it is. And that's kind of one of the things we want to talk about today. It's funny, people start their businesses, and it's they start dreaming about freedom and they end up checking all their emails at a kid's soccer game. So for you, I know we've talked about this a lot, this idea of work-life harmony. When did you first realize, period, that business ownership wasn't quite what you thought it was going to be when you got started?
Before business ownership.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, so before it was even coined a term, I was an entrepreneur for the longest time. I've always liked growing things and developing stuff. Even back in, I still do from time to time, playing video games.
Yeah.
I liked franchise mode. I liked going in and picking the crappiest teams in Madden and saying, all right, let's build this thing up and do something. And I didn't even care about playing the game. I just wanted to turn something around, win a Super Bowl, and make the team really profitable. And fast forward in life, like that's what I like doing in businesses too. I was like, all right, give me something that is really hard or a location that most don't do a great job operating in, and give me a shot. Like I liked coming in and being the underdog. But in all those experiences and with so many lessons learned, I was, around some business owners that I really appreciated their mentorship and everything. But I realized with them, they were busy all the time. And I was even frustrated as, one of the top guys that was helping grow things that, man, I reach out to them. They don't reply for 2 or 3 days sometimes. And it wasn't until probably a year or two ago, I finally was like, oh, I get it. Like, not everything that everybody needs all the time, although it matters to them, matters to me in this moment because there's other things that are more pressing. And yeah, I think, early on I was at least around it and didn't realize it. But then, fast forward to now, yeah, it's not what everybody has glorified it to be online and in the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've worked with a lot of business owners, and they obviously are probably not like you in that they just wanted to build something and build things, but they end up getting to this place to where they're working really hard and doing a lot of the things, and they're really, in a nutshell, sacrificing themselves for the business. Tell me about some of the things that you've experienced with these business owners, and like how you've seen them deteriorate over time, and what does that even look like?
I think the life cycle is the same for most of them. I mean, for the most part. And let me just be clear, like I am not speaking down to anybody. This is just, I go through this myself, but the life cycle's pretty consistent. Like they get an idea, generally they're like, hey, I'm really good at something. I want to turn this into a business. Or they were let go from another place in which they, considered themselves a key member. And they're like, I can do this. This is easy. Mm-hmm. And they only see it from their vantage point. And you get excited, you start putting something together, they get a little bit of momentum. And then for almost all of us, you flatline, at some point, and you start seeing this lack of return mm-hmm. on your investment and your time inside of the business. And, most people at that point, at least that I've seen, they double down on continuing to put time in. And that means that in other areas of their life, all of a sudden they're not involved anymore. And for a lot of people, that's taking care of yourself. That's time with family. That's vacations. That's all of these other things that we actually got into business for. Mm-hmm. And the reason we do it, for the most part, a lot of it's ego and pride. We had made this commitment to all these family members and friends and everybody, like, I'm going to do this thing. And a lot of people told you couldn't do it anyway. And so you've got this pride that's like, I'm going to do this to spite you. Like, I am going to make this successful. So you grind to try to get there. And then naturally all of us have, some level of ego that lives inside of us that, wants us to be, for whatever reasons, affirmations from others, relevancy, in the space that you're in, you want to have some success. So you just keep pushing the needle in the area of life, which is business. And then everything else ends up having to sacrifice because of that. And generally when we ever stepped in, so in the consulting side of BLG or Best Life Group, and we were stepping in, it was when people like they've experienced a certain level of success. So we generally didn't work with business owners that were doing under $500,000 a year, which in most spaces isn't a tremendous amount of money. But when you're in a service space, especially if you're one of these like solopreneurs, there's a lot going on at $500,000 a year. And we would step in, and like they liked the idea of the company name, like, all right, what's this cliche thing that y'all are talking about? And we're like, no, we've been where you're at too. And then we would see that most of these, guys and gals had no systems, no really great right-hand person. Culture, if it even existed, was really suffering. There was no day strategy. Organization was lacking, like everything. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they were just working. They weren't being efficient with their time. They just spent a lot of time doing things that didn't move the needle. And then I think, like I said, then everyone just starts sacrificing everywhere else in life. And I think you just get so far down in the trenches, man, you just don't even know what to do and how to fix that.
Yeah, it's I've been there, man. You mentioned being a solopreneur, so I've I've tried that. I've gone that route, man, and I guess people don't really realize for me, I didn't realize the amount of responsibility and work that came with it, that it, it's not necessarily about the responsibility and work. It's just realizing that like you're going to sacrifice all of these other things in order to get to where you got to go. And then for me, I'm one of those tunnel vision kind of people. Like I'll just get tunnel vision and lock in on this thing. And then you forget. For me, it was like forgetting all the other things that were around me that were more important. So you end up sacrificing, the things that really matter to you on the altar of I want more money. And then you start thinking, you're like, man, you have some moments just in life, whether it's, with wife, kids or whatever, where you're like, am I going to throw all this away for that when my whole purpose in getting into this was to have more time with these people? So yeah, it's that speaking to the ego and all those things, man. So at least I know that I'm not alone. I know, and talking to a lot of business owners over the years, like, we do this here. We ask, okay, so, how much revenue do you want to see in the next 12 to 18 months? And then they give the number. And then the next question, the follow-up question for us is, okay, well, what does that mean for you in your life? Because we're not just about helping you grow the business, but how does that serve you as a person? And some business owners are kind of taking they're like, oh, let me think about that. I don't know. And we were talking about this morning how business owners will, like, it's like they're doing it for the sake of doing it. Like there's no actual goal.
It's a vanity metric, man.
Yeah.
I mean, people, it's really easy to understand when you're speaking with, other business owners, especially when it's ego heavy conversations, to say, oh, we just did 2 million, we did 10 million, we did 50 million. People get that. But, to your point, that follow-up question, like, well, what is this underlying goal? And like, how does this better support your life and what you're trying to accomplish? Most people don't even know the answer to that question right out the gate, which is a scary thing.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know. I guess I want to, I guess I want to spend more time with the family. It's like, what? You guess? Are you sure?
But we have the opposite of that too in some of these conversations with people, man. Like they're interested in marketing, but then you get down to some of the reasons in which they don't want to. And it's like, why would I want twice as many headaches?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the systems and people in place right now. I already don't like my life. I already have too much stress. My wife is already mad at me. I already miss the baseball games. Like, so growth for some people is paralyzing.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the systems in place yet.
Yeah. They can't even see it. It's like, so a lot of times we're not, we think, oh, everybody wants to grow and get bigger, but it's a fear there that we're really dealing with because if you really think about their lives, they're, like you said, they're taking it from every which way and they don't know. So sometimes the answer is not marketing, it's a system, it's the systems. So how did you, I know you've got tons of stories, like how does that play out when you're consulting with these businesses?
Man. I think, we do have tons of stories. One of my favorites, though, man, is a gentleman that we worked with for a little over a year. And I'd known of him for a couple of years, and he was very, very outspoken.
Mm-hmm.
Really liked attention inside of social media platforms, which they teach their own. And he had connected. It was like, I've heard really great things about you guys. Like, I need this in my life. And at first I was like, this is going to go really, really well or really bad. Like because I was like, if we, for some reason, don't help this guy level up, he's going to call us out on it. And so I was like, all right, it's time to shine. And we had plenty of receipts that showed like we can do this shit at a much higher level than he was even looking at. So we took him on as a client, and the first 30 days were a little rough.
Mm-hmm.
We were transitioning, but actually it was in December, so close to this time. So we generally were paving the way for the next year, slowing some things down. We had some newer team members, and we had an issue with tracking some of the stuff in his ads reports. And he got super upset because we were tracking it down to the receipt. So I hopped on the phone with him. We went through just some simple understanding of what the number relatively was. based off of what his average tickets were. And he was like, I'm comfortable with all that, but I'm still concerned because, you guys said you were the data experts. And, if I don't see the data, then I'm pissed. And I'm like, hey, man, fair enough. So we ended up working for that month for free for him just because I was like, dude, you've got a point. Team should have definitely, caught this way early on. So let me just, this one's on me. And so that really bought us some favor or some grace from him. And then he actually came out here and spent 2 days with us. And he was like, he got here, and we hear this a lot. It's like, I don't want a business or businesses as big as you guys. I'm like, okay. And I normally think two things right away when somebody says that. It's either A, you just don't like the idea of the responsibility and all the stress, which I get that. Or B, like you just can't see yourself here because you've never played it at this level. Mm-hmm. And I get that as well. So we had some conversations, and we were really just talking about some forecasting and planning for him for the next year. And he was like, look, I'll be honest with you, man, I'm not super smart. I'm not really great with numbers. I didn't even finish high school. So please don't share a bunch of reports and spreadsheets with me that go way over my head. Please bring this down to a third grade level. I'm like, all right, cool. So we took all these spreadsheets and stuff that we used to have, and we brought them down to the level in which he wanted us to. And as we got done with conversations, actually in this room, we used to meet with people in here before we turned this into a studio. He was floored by the level of information that he actually had already lived within his own business. He just never like extrapolated or pulled the information out and really looked at it. And so he had showed us like where his primary, like we'll call it his headquarters, was located, and then where he generally served. And he was like, I like this area that I serve because there's a lot of it, like money and affluence there. However, logistically, it's a pain in the ass for me to get to. I'd rather serve closer to my home base because it's just more efficient and more economical. And I'm like, well, cool. With marketing, like we can do that. And so we had created a new strategy for SEO and ad campaigns for him. And all these things did really well. But then he shared with me in those moments, he's like, I just want to let you know, I live 2.5 hours from my office. And I'm like, what? Like I live 45 minutes from here, and I think that's a commute some days. I'm like, 2.5 hours, bro. Wow. You're 40 hours a week commuting. So he was out in California, and he lived so far away because affordability, number one. But no, he was like, even if I live relatively close with traffic in this area, like it's still the same amount of time. The distance is less. And I'm like, man, this just sucks. And so he said, I want to get down to only coming to the office 1 day a week. And I want to spend more time with my family and go on vacations. And I'm like, okay. He's like, I want to double revenue and I want to increase my profitability. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, okay, let's, and I just looked at it and I was like, all right, I'm not Jesus. Like, I'm not going to promise you any crazy miracles, but I'm like, look, I hear you and we'll do our damnedest. So we ended up going out to see him shortly after, checked out his space, and he actually did a really good job prepping for us to come out there. Like the place was just super nice, clean. I mean, everything was laid out really well. And we just helped him based off the numbers that we went over, identify what things he should keep, what things he should get rid of, what things he should double down on. And then from like an operational perspective, if he didn't want to be there, because he talked about churn and some other things, I'm like, okay, well, if we cannot have like 200 different SKUs or 100 different SKUs and we get it down to 20 and you just get deep on those items, and let's not guess on what those things should be. Like you have historical data of people telling you what they like the most based off of what they purchased. And you can see those utilization reports, like we'll just double down on those things and get rid of the other stuff. So we started going through this stuff, and man, he was like a kid in a candy store. He like all of a sudden fell in love with reporting and was just like, bro, this just makes sense. We'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this. And dude, he just started selling stuff. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, he didn't need as much space. And so he was like renting smaller storage spaces. So he was like, I don't need as many spaces. So this is going to save me some money. And then he streamlined his training for new people. And then he literally, I mean, I have a video from him at one point. He's like, I haven't been to the office in the last 40 days. He was able to do everything from his freaking phone and his laptop in his backyard. Sweet. And then the crazy thing was, so as we were still having conversations about the service area he was in, he's like, a lot of people are cheap out here. And I'm like, dude, you're literally in freaking Silicon Valley, man. Mm-hmm. You may have a lot of people that are cheap out here, but you also have a lot of money out here. Yeah. So let's charge people appropriately. So one of the items that he had, he was charging, my goodness gracious, way less than I was. And I was like, I think you should at least increase, your rental price on this by 50%, if not more. And he's like, there's just no way. And I'm like, look, people come to you for convenience. People in your area are not going to go out and rent this item from a third-party provider, drive in their nice-ass car to go pick this thing up, go get gasoline from it somewhere else, then unload it, load it back in, go. I was like, it is such a pain in the ass to do this. Just charge more. So that day, he decides to up the price by 50%. And that night, when he comes back into the office the next day, he's like, man, we just had an order come through and the person rented 5 of this item along with all their other ones, and it paid for my plane ticket back, just that one order.
Wow.
And now, to be fair, he was buying plane tickets last minute because he also wanted to just kind of ebb and flow with reality, which means his tickets were more expensive, which also means that, we did a good job. And so as we fast forwarded through this legacy with him, he was able to almost double. He ran into some health issues towards the end of that year, which slowed things down a little bit, but he almost doubled his revenue, significantly increased profitability because he was able to bring his service location in tighter to where he was located. And even with the health issues that he was going through, he didn't feel like he was the bottleneck and the linchpin to everything in his business. It was still able to continue on.
Mm-hmm.
He bought his family a nice SUV, which was a big deal for him. He's like, I just want a big ass, I think it was an Infiniti that he bought SUV, but he's like, I just want a big ass SUV that my whole entire family can get in. And then when he had the medical issues come up, he didn't have to worry so much about how am I going to afford to pay for this shit. And at that point, I would say he wasn't, quote unquote, living his best life, because obviously medical stuff, hugely matters and can be debilitating. But based off of all the decisions that he made, and to be fair, he made the decisions, he put the work in to get the SOPs and stuff in place. He sold everything, but he listened with an open mind. He acted on the majority of the information, and he completely transformed and revolutionized his business. And for him, going out of town to go out with his family and do stuff for vacation wasn't, a week at Waikiki or anything. He just went to water parks and stuff with his kids and had a blast. And he even made a video for us at one point with one of his sons. And he's just like, hey buddy, how much money does daddy have in the bank account right now? And the kid's like, I don't know. How fast is our car? I don't know. How big is our house? I don't know. And he's like, what do you love the most? And he's like, spending time with you. And he's like, yeah, guys, this is what it's all about. It's like your kids don't know or don't give a shit about any of that other stuff. All that's for you.
Yeah.
And so, that was one of my favorite success stories. And then we've got, others that didn't work out so well because they weren't as receptive to the information. There was a lot of buts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head with the bottlenecks, man. Being the bottleneck is the thing that it's almost like, I don't know, man. It's like you don't see it. It's hard to see that you're the bottleneck to everything. But I typically, if I'm diagnosing it properly, most of these business owners have trust issues.
Oh yeah.
They feel like it's almost like they're just holding on to the work. I've got to get it done because they're perfectionists. They've seen what works. And they just,
I don't know. I wouldn't say they're perfectionists. I would say they're terrible teachers.
That's a good point.
It's one thing to know how to do something, but if you can't explain it at an elementary level to somebody else who's never seen it before, you're not a good teacher. And when you're not a good teacher and not a good coach, it's very hard to get a team around you that is sufficient to do the things that you do. And a lot of business owners, because they've had some failures in that area, they get very calloused and frustrated with the job market or the talent market that we have. And the reality is, it's not that the people suck so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you're not great at training, and that's okay. Find somebody else who is.
Yeah.
Or figure it out. And I think one of the easiest ways for me to ever figure out if I was the bottleneck to everything is go on vacation.
Yeah.
Seriously. Or just take a day off and completely disconnect. If you come back and you've got 150 emails and everything has come to a halt, you're a huge problem.
Yeah.
If you can go on vacation with your family, and I used to laugh back in the day, my team would be like, hey, don't answer your email. I'm like, I can't do that. And I'd be checking it constantly. And there were payroll questions. There were questions about routing. There were questions about purchase orders. And it's like, I created this mess.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can go on vacation and things continue to move, you're in a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. So for any business owners that are starting to see themselves in this conversation where, you know, you are the guy at the school recital, checking the emails, or you can't go on vacation, or you don't even feel comfortable going on vacation. What does it look like when an owner finally decides like to start taking this journey, like from being the bottleneck to kind of removing themselves? How do you get there?
So I mentioned it a couple episodes back. One of the things that I've encouraged other people to do, and it's not even business owners, it's team members that say they're overwhelmed. Just start documenting your day, and literally down to everything. And you may not be super comfortable when you go back and look and say, God, how many fucking hours did I spend having conversations that had absolutely nothing to do with work inside of the workplace? And let's be real, not everything you do is going to be just work heavy. But if you start documenting everything, you get really clear really quickly. Where am I efficient? Where am I moving the needle? Where am I wasting a bunch of fucking time? And then if you can take that stuff and then segment it out and then go, okay, I am worth this many dollars per hour. Like when I'm working, this is what I'm worth. Anything below that amount of money, you should be outsourcing. Somebody else or something else should be doing this for you in some capacity. And let's be real, like a lot of people may be going, well, I can't afford anything. Like I can't afford, well, you got to figure out that if you can't afford to pay something, then you're going to have to figure out a way to put more time into learning a skill like automation to help with some of this stuff, or how to leverage AI to help with some of this stuff. Or you're just going to have to make some sort of investment in it, you know, borrow some money, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. But start looking at those things. And for me, that's always been huge. Like, and I think we all go through these different chapters or these different levels of this, but you go in and say, okay, what am I, you know, the best at? Where do I move the needle the most? And everything else should go to something else or to someone else. And I think one of the hardest things is, in most of the people that we've worked with, they've had some semblance of a team. They have had people, but there are so many things that they do, back to your trust issue point, that they don't want to share with others because they're not really good at teaching the thing or showing, you know, someone how to do it. But they're also just terrified that if somebody makes a mistake doing this, it's really going to fuck things up. You have to take that chance. Like, you literally have to. Mm-hmm. And because otherwise you're never going to grow exponentially. And so, you know, with those things, I think one of the, and Miles, you know, who we work with is somebody, that I am very fond of, but he has shared, you know, giving team members stretch projects. Mm-hmm. Give people something that's a little bit outside of their comfort zone right now. Because I think that's the other thing that a lot of us, you know, take for granted or don't really account for, is that the people that are on our team that want to be here, they want to be challenged. They want to learn new things. They really do. If they're not challenged and they're never learning anything new, they're not going to have a sense of fulfillment. And if you don't have a sense of fulfillment, you find something else to do because you get bored. And so when you say, hey, you're really good at X, and they're like, oh, well, thank you. That was very nice. I would also like to show you something that I've been doing to this point, but I think you'd be really great at it too. I just want to kind of show you the why behind why we do this and then how we do it. And then I would like you to take ownership of it moving forward. And here's the impact, like, of what this means for the business. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, well, thank you. Mm-hmm. And then you let them do it. You still manage it. You don't just walk away. Right. You still oversee the thing. And most jump in when something goes wrong and just save the day and get frustrated and say, oh, they're not great at it. No, don't jump in and save the day. Ask questions. Mm-hmm. If something doesn't look right, ask questions. There are times in which I've let people fail, as long as it wasn't a safety issue, as long as it wasn't hugely terrible financially. I've learned some of my best lessons when, you know, the amazing people that I work for intentionally let me fail.
Yep.
Like, let me go down, because I'd get an idea and I'm so excited. And they're like, yeah, you do the thing. And then you get to the end and they're like, how did that turn out? And how much did it cost us? And it's like, well, it didn't turn out great and it cost us a lot of money. And they're like, oh, what did you learn from it? And so I loved those moments. But if you can continue to audit the things that you do, figure out how you can automate and delegate things to other people, and then decide, back to harmony, in the very, very beginning that you mentioned, with this additional time that I have, do I double down on working on the things that provide the biggest impact for my business, or am I just buying myself more time so I can focus on something else in my life that I care about? And a lot of times, especially as you start to ascend, in building a team and in business ownership and those things, now all of a sudden you start buying back some of that time outside of the office to do the things which are, I need to take care of myself. I need to spend more time with my wife. I need to spend more time with my kids. I need to go on vacation. And then again, it's just a constant audit of that time and attention and where it's going.
Yeah. Skincare,
Don't even get me started on that.
I was messing with you, but yeah, man. I mean, you're right, man. Geez, man. It's so tough though, man. It's really tough when you're in the weeds every day. But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're the business owner, the buck stops with you. So you've got to figure out a way to get out of the way and allow yourself to grow. So, anyway, so before we wrap up, I want to ask you one question here, just practical steps. A lot of these business owners out here are probably doing 50 things while they're listening to this podcast right now. But what's the first step to the business owner, if you had to just sum it up? The first step towards building a business that works for them and serves them and serves their life, and rather than consuming their life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in line with relatively what I just said, but I think audit your time first, figure out where that time's going, and then decide what things can you automate and delegate. Generally, like the lowest hanging fruit is administrative stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have a platform or platforms that make payroll, time tracking, paying POs, ordering things, like is all that stuff in place? Because although all of those things are super necessary, it's not something that you need to be spending a lot of your time doing.
Yeah.
And if it's not a platform that helps you fix that, is it a person? And then, I mean, something that we see, very, very commonly in the conversations I have, people are afraid to make an investment in a person because they want to pay wages that make sense. But it's an investment for them. Nearshore or offshore the stuff. I mean, there's plenty of intelligent people around the world that can help with these things too. And then obviously trust, is the thing there as well. But audit your time, focus on administrative stuff and getting that stuff positioned for other people. When you do that, it's going to give you more time inside of your operations. Do not be the guy or the gal that is the linchpin of things inside of operations. Like, I mean, we're going through this right now. I mean, as we're transitioning into a new CRM and project management tool, I literally built a column over the weekend, which is everything that we do has to have a playbook or an SOP associated with it, so anybody can come in at any given time and see how we do the thing. Do that. And it does eat up a lot of time. Like, I've spent so much time with entrepreneurs and they're like, oh my God, this is exhaustive. It's necessary. And if you don't do it, who is going to? Now, if you've got somebody on your team who loves operations and loves documenting shit, let them do it. Again, stretch assignment. Let's have a meeting and discuss what this should look like. Let them put one together. And if it's really good, let them do all of them. Like people would love to say, oh, I developed all of the entire handbook, for the company, or how we do everything here. Like, there's some real ownership and excitement in that for people. But audit your time, focus on the administrative stuff going somewhere else or to something else, get your operational SOPs dialed in. Then from there, you can really focus on sales and growing something. And then your marketing should be right after that. And that's not even my blueprint. I mean, that's Dan Martell. And if you're not familiar with him, read Buy Back Your Time. Exceptional book, but that's really where it is. And if you can do those things, you can really grow and scale a business. But if you don't get rid of the low hanging shit, the administrative and operation stuff, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. That fear will just stay there.
Right.
And it's really hard for people to overcome that fear if they see all the mess.
Right.
Yeah. So, you've talked to me about this, being a manager and auditing my time. And, I'm one of those, I come from that, man, like, being an entrepreneur, in life and having somebody just screw up the work. I wasn't making this distinction between being a good trainer and a teacher and just telling somebody they need to do something. So if they did it wrong or they didn't do it right, it's like, hey, I'm just going to jump in there and I'm going to knock it out and do it.
Terrible idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you eat it on the back end because you've spent, that's when team no sleep comes in where you're really like, yeah, I've been up for 72 hours straight, drinking 5-hour energies, and you feel some sense of accomplishment because you got it done. But there's all these other things are just going to shit around you. So it's tough. It's been really cool, like being a manager and like seeing, feeling the impulse to like step in and solve the problem, but having to take a step back and kind of let people kind of fail, let them do things, ask the right questions, and really it helps you grow as a person and as a leader, but it ain't easy.
No, it's not, but there's some practical two things that I've noticed a lot, in the years that we've been doing this. You've got your service-based business owners who are really good at the operation and doing the actual technical trade that it is that they do. And I've noticed in a lot of my dealings that so many of those are also the salesperson that answers the phone, that is doing project management, that is doing purchase order, that is doing so many of these things that if you got down to a system inside of a project management tool or a CRM, somebody else could do them. And I can't tell you the amount of times that some great conversation and even like consulting visits have just been completely derailed because they don't have someone or something to help with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up just like every single day is that death by 1,000 tiny cuts. Like you do so many things, you're completely exhausted, but like you don't even know what you really accomplished except for surviving the day. And that's terrible. But I've also seen, even in a lot of our own businesses, and I've seen it with, team members at BLG and a lot of other places, you get this person who is hyper-focused on inbox zero, multitasking, being everything to everyone. They've got 47-inch widescreen monitors with 65 tabs open.
Talking about me.
Right. And me before, but and literally a notification comes in, they respond to it. So they stop what they're doing. They check their inbox. They're responding to this. They see another notification about a bill. So they're in QuickBooks and they're trying to die. And then you get to lunchtime and you're like, what? I was supposed to be working on setting up the automations for this new system and I haven't even had time. And then you're frustrated and then you repeat the same shit the last half of the day.
Yep.
And then you don't move the needle in anything. Like one of the best things that I've done for myself is just shut it off.
Mm-hmm.
Shut off your email. Like no one, as I've been training an executive assistant right now, and she's helping monitor some of this stuff. And I told her, I'm like, look, my email at the end of the day, if it's a real emergency, someone's going to text me.
True.
If it's a real emergency, they're going to call me. And she's not managing my phone for me at any capacity and never will. So everything else isn't an emergency.
Right.
So just shut it off. And I've even sectioned out times of the day where I'll go and check those things, but it's not like it used to be back in the day when I would check it 24/7, never had something that was unanswered. And I'll tell you what, all I did was train everybody else around me that I was available at any second of the day, all the time, which meant that I didn't value my own time.
Mm.
And you're never going to be great. And this is, I mentioned being an entrepreneur and working for others. Sometimes they didn't respond for a couple of days. But I'll tell you what, those business owners moved the fucking needle because they focused on the things that mattered the most, which was the growth of the business. And they didn't train me and everybody else to say, hey, if you reach out to David, he's going to respond right away.
Yep.
And so that's been something that's been hugely beneficial for me. And even as you're going through that process and you're having to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and train, your team, they're going to feel, and even your significant other. I've done this, my wife and I have had this conversation, been doing this for years, but sometimes when they reach out or come to your office and knock on the door, whatever it may be, hey, do you need this done right now? Is this an emergency or can I get to, and a lot of times they're like, oh no, I just wanted to make you aware.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Hey, if you don't mind, just send me an email next time. And if there's a time in which you need this by, just put it in the email. Oh yeah, no problem. And all of a sudden people knock on your door less, you get less instant messages about a thing. And you can really fold people into your process, which is, I'm going to focus on growing tomorrow. and I need you guys to focus on today.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. I used to, I definitely struggled early on, and I'm still kind of working through this whole idea. But what I remember, I'd come to these moments, especially when I was working for myself, where I realized, like, damn, I can't be great at everything. Like, I can only be good like
Yeah.
at all of these things, because there's just not enough time in the day. Like, you can't be, on our side from a marketing perspective, like, you can't be the best SEO guy and the best Facebook guy and the best Google Ads guy and the best brand strategy guy, and you can't. It's all of it. Like, from a marketing perspective, like, we know things change so often. There are things to spend time and test, and there's, and oh my gosh, and that's just one part of your business. Like, I'm just thinking of all the things you have to be great at, and from a marketing perspective, and there are these people that are running full businesses and trying to do their own marketing at the same time. I'm like, what about the bookkeeping? What about the operations? What about I'm like, Jesus.
You want to know a good hack? If you're not a systems person and some of this seems a little bit pie in the sky or over your head, man, you want a real quick way to see if you're efficient with your time and when you need to make changes. Do 75 hard. And not because of the physical aspect, and there's a lot of good things that come from it, but the one of the amazing things that it has taught me is, to your point, there's just not enough time in the day. When I have to prioritize multiple workouts, my meal prep, and the planning that goes into that, I mean, the time that I have to read, between the 65 bathroom breaks from all the water a day and everything else. And then, if you get through the first portion of it and then you go into phase one, well, in phase one of the 3 important tasks that I added a dedicated 30 minutes of time with one of my kids, which one of them's overseas. One of them, goes and sees her dad every other weekend. But then, my son, it was easier to spend more time with him. I'll tell you what, that one challenge really kicked my ass because I found, and then I added 30 more minutes of physical activity, which was dumb as hell. But I ended up fragmenting my time so much. Like, I used to joke, I'm like, I don't have time to do anything other than the things that are on my schedule. So then when it came to things that were work related, I only had a 9-hour block a day to get shit done. I've got no time for anything else. And then if I didn't sleep, I didn't recover. So then your body starts to break down and everything else starts to follow. So everything had to be so mindful and so thought out and intentional in that process that if I was everything to everybody all the time, I A, would have never made it through 75 hard, but then B, would have never made it as far as I did into the program.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a great auditor. It really is. If anything, it really taught me, outside of, mental resilience and toughness and all those kind of things, like, are you good with your time or are you not? Because if you're not, you won't make it through.
Yeah. Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, man. I did not make it through. Oh, man. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me, personally, was sleep, dude. Like I will forsake my sleep for everything, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna start working out, and then I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I didn't get to sleep till 2. I can just get up at 5 and go work out, go to the gym, and then I'm like, you know what I mean? Like,
oh man, everything has diminishing returns if you're not sleeping.
Yeah, and that was my big thing. So what my transition has been over the last month and a half, 2 months, is to prioritize sleep.
Yeah.
Like, make sure that I'm getting in bed and getting the sleep that I need, man. And I've seen such a difference in like in just the way in my thought processes, and just being, and my wife would always say, like, she'd tell me how when I'm sleep deprived, like, I miss stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, my ego, my pride was like, whatever, man, I'm cool. But, you can definitely see the difference when you start sleeping. I'm like, man, I would have missed that before. But yeah, man, it's 75 hard is definitely an auditor. I think what it taught me was, really what it did for me was like, man, Jay, you need to get more sleep. Like, you got to get sleep, because I was trying to do all the things with no rest, no energy. And I'm like, like the most important thing for you right now is to consistently get more sleep, start eating better, like, and start stacking these wins. And it's been great, man. But
yeah, so to take this full circle, to your recovery thing that you had mentioned with 75 Hard, I think that, going back to the Facebook post, from the very beginning, that, it's not that you need more sleep. You need something to get you out of bed. And I think that that's where so many business owners really could get that fire or get reignited again, as if you took the time to audit what you're doing, put systems, processes, and people in place to help you do all these monotonous things that you don't love doing. Then all of a sudden, when you're doing the things that move the needle, that get you excited about why you started the business again in the first place, you end up reigniting that fire, really pursuing that why again.
mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, you don't need necessarily more sleep. Yeah, you need sleep. You need to rest. You need to recover, but you don't need more. And I think that's what so many people are missing. So if you're a business owner and you're listening to this, or even you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this and you're like, man, I just don't have that spark right now. I'm not as excited as I used to be about whatever it is that I do. Try to find out why.
Mm-hmm.
And chances are you're just spinning your wheels and you're not getting that traction, so you're not as excited. So try to find an integrator or be that integrator and make sure that you've got automation, systems, processes, people, playbooks, SOPs, et cetera. Start putting these things into place so you can quit focusing on the day-to-day stuff and start focusing on tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. So at the end of the day, guys, like, why is really the key? Like, if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing and why you got into this thing in the first place, then everything's just, at the end of the day, it's all pointless. You're going to continue to feel that pressure from, feel that pressure and not be able to get through anything. You'll be stuck. So you need to like find your way out with why you started in the first place. And then just to your point, then put all the systems, then it becomes worth it to put all the systems in place. That work, because it's going to take some work to put it together. But the only way you can get through it, the resilience that you need, is going to be in the why. So you have to figure that out. But I want to thank you guys. I really want to thank you guys for joining us. I think this was a very valuable conversation, because whether you're a manager, entrepreneur, business owner, auditing your time, kind of figuring out what's actually going on and what's going to move the needle for you, is really important for you guys to figure out what your best life, or actually get to your best life, and what that looks like. So thank you guys so much for joining us here today on Life by the Horns. Remember that your business should be one ingredient in a great life and not the whole meal. But until next time, keep growing smarter, not harder. I'm Jarvis Gatlin with Dustin Lundy, and we're out.
See you guys.
Peace.